Okay, alrighty. So we are going to talk this week about a new course I never played before. I heard about it many times and never actually found it. But so I couldn't play it, but I did finally find it. Just kind of stumbled on it by accident in the overall combination, permutation flow of life in general. It is called Patriots Glen. Yes, you may have heard of this if you're a Maryland resident. It's like the Flying Dutchman. Everyone talks about this, but no one really knows. No one's really seen it. It's just a ship of legend, much like this course, Patriots Glen. And speaking of old mariners' tales, this course is somewhat of an old school course. It's a lot like many courses in Baltimore that are clearly a little older in their architecture, and then I would say most courses in the DC area, or at least 80s, 90s architecture. This course is a lot like what's that one about? I shouldn't say anything about like this because it's bad to refer to courses that people don't know, and I can barely remember the name of it anyway. One outside of Annapolis that I played, which is similar to that, although I heard they've redone that one also. Anyways, this course is a standout course. I will say, I will give it that credit. It is a fairly unique kind of throwback golf course in a way that is actually, I would say, intriguing, gives it a good level of challenge, and makes it worth the drive. Certainly worth the $65 to play it on a weekend after, I don't know, 2, I think it was, but not expensive. The only real problem I think that's kind of a downer, and I would even say the Amtrak train, which goes right behind the course, literally. You can hear pretty much all over the neighborhood when it goes through. Even though it's not really loud when it goes, it's the express train, the high-speed one. Or at least it's doing 65 miles an hour or something. It's doing a good speed. It's not that loud, but you can hear it. The sound of it is penetrating, like a bass line or something like that. Even though it's not 100 decibels, you can still hear it, in your car when your car window's up. The train is a lot like that, and it's not a really annoying sound, but it's definitely a sound. Like there's substantial volume and tone and timbre to that sound, and there are a couple of holes where the tracks go fairly close to the hole, and I've seen worse. I've seen, definitely seen much more noisy courses than this one. It does give it kind of a character, if you will. The traffic going by the course is not insignificant, but not overbearing. There are houses that are on some sections of the course, likewise, not insignificant, not overbearing. I think there's one tee box where, at least on the back tees, there's a house like right off the tee box, which is not too unusual, and 1 or 2 houses there is not a big deal. It's a lot like a lot of courses in that regard that are the shorter, I'd say 6,500 type courses, but unusual in the sense that the greens are very small compared to a lot of courses. You don't get these big, like skating rink sized greens at this course. And when they're like a squashed oval or something like that, and have a decent amount of verticality to them, they can be interesting. But the thing that really lets this course down in terms of the greens, where they could be very interesting greens to play, is that they basically leave the grass long, and then they water the grass. So the course gets, it was a good amount of traffic, considering it was hot. It was not like one of the hottest days that I played, but it was hot enough. It was definitely plenty hot enough. Sun was bright, it was just cooking you. I know when I got done, I was fairly well roasted, I can tell you that. And I had plenty to drink on the course. But I was certainly cooked by the time I got done. So it wasn't like the course doesn't get maintenance. It has a good amount of water there. I guess it's in some kind of marshlands, where on just about every hole you see some kind of marsh or marsh grass or some kind of creek or something that's running along the sidelines. It's big on that. I think that's probably one of the signatures I would say here is it's definitely a wetlands type of course where it has all that marsh grass and stuff. And it's not an easy course. I wouldn't say it's a tough course. I'd say it's knocking on the door to be a good challenge of a golf course, especially from the back tees, but I wouldn't say it's hard. I would say a mid 130s course, apt certainly, and that's basically taking the putting as a push. Though it could be worse, it could be better. It's not great. It is rather frustrating to putt balls and see them fall asleep on the way in. Anyway, so we're going to finish this off. We're going to do this real quick. So basically, the whole thing is it's a nice place. I would definitely say it is a very nice place to stop in and have food and drinks afterwards. The carts are more or less, I would say, a very, very, very sedate and well-muffled version of a gas cart. So not that noisy at all. A winding course, somewhat, some rises, some depressions, definitely some interesting shots, certainly. But I think the thing is that there's a good mix. It has some good size water on it, and you just have a great time. It's really cool. So let's see what else has come up here. Anyway, so the important thing to remember is it's not the fact that it's outstanding that makes it a good facility. It's the fact that it's enjoyable that makes it a good facility. It doesn't have to be spectacular. Doesn't need to be a 5-star place. You just need it to be a decent place. Costs a decent amount of money. It's not super hard to get to. It's not super hard to get on, and you have a good time, And they definitely were personable. Staff was very personable. Had a great time there, and it was a good throwback to the to old school kind of golf, where it wasn't super complicated, super wide, super big, super long. Just a decent, modest course. The only knock that I could give it was the greens were thick and slow and wet, especially because it either rained earlier the day, I think it did that night before, or they'd come out and watered it. And I don't think that was the case. I think it just rained up there the day before, so very slow, annoyingly slow, and that wasn't a good thing. But other than that, I had a great time. Had a wonderful time playing it. The other problem, which you may or may not have with it, is it's tucked in this god-awful part of Elkton, the northeastern, just about as close as you can get to rising sun, but not get to rising sun, I guess, is the whole point. And I mean, it's just like you're coming out of Delaware, and man, it's like the ooze of traffic out of Delaware can get to be a real pain in the ass. And then you still have to goof around a little bit to find this course. And you're like, okay. So the thing to remember is it's not far from Buell Rock, which is one thing. Okay. The second thing is it's not far from another course which is on Route 1, but I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but it's right up the road on Route 1, probably about 15, maybe about half an hour drive from there. Just as you cross Route 1 heading north, there's a really decent course there, which is not ideal either, which is truly a weird course, but it is a good challenge of a golf course. Sort of like Blue Mash, but even more convoluted, more difficult. And with houses on the back nine, a lot of houses. And so that's one there. There's green, Greystone is not far from there, although not close. I mean, it's definitely a good 45-minute drive back towards 83. It's just off 83, and before you get to the Pennsylvania line. So while it's in a good enough place, it's still not a really great place. It's just like Delaware Shore traffic all day driving around there. And there's another course called the Chesapeake Bay Golf Club, which is down on the other side of 95 on 273, which was, I think, like a 10 or 15 minute drive west out 273, route 273, down towards the Conowaco crossing on Route 1. It's on the way towards that, which I will probably be playing sometime in the next couple of months also. So got the top 10 list of courses in Maryland, and this course was on that list, or top 15 list. And so it wasn't like a really spectacularly great place, but it was definitely a good round. I was very satisfied. not super happy, but satisfied. It was definitely a decent round. So that's Patriots Glen, and it is in Elkton, Maryland, in the suburbs of Elkton, Maryland, just north of Route 40, I think just southwest of the Rising Sun exit off of 95. Definitely a decent B-star, definitely a decent course, definitely worth playing. I'd like to add here, I think this was a really decent course. It certainly is not, a big, lush, great, wide, long course or towering course up in the mountains with stupendous views. It's a decent course. Now, it also had I would say, a fairly good list of, good-sized list of things that normally I get aggravated about playing a course in an environment like that. Cars, trains, traffic rolling by. There's a road running by one of the holes, number 15 or so. But basically, the course is really not that much trouble to deal with in terms of noise. And all the problems that I normally would have in a course like this, I really didn't have, because there were just not that much, even on a Saturday afternoon. And it was a really decent course. It was a feel-good kind of course that I think was a technical course that certainly was a player's course, not a big hitter's course. Although it was long enough to be interesting in that regard, it certainly was not a big hitter's course. It was not one of those courses where you have like 45 degrees to play in, or 90, 60, whatever, to hit the ball in. It was a nice eastern coast tree-lined course with modest vertical variation, small greens, lots of bumps and stuff around the greens. What would make for a 145 course if it was longer. I think it was a nice mixture of technical difficulty and length without being too long or too tight or overbearing with its obnoxious levels of difficulty. And I've played courses like that where just way too much, and this course was not like that at all. And I certainly think that as a modest course where you aren't doing a lot of uphill, downhill, around blind corners and stuff like that, it had a lot going for it. And I think the course rose above the fact that it was in an environment which was not necessarily the best environment for golf. It's definitely a nice course, definitely a fun player's course. And it's certainly when it was not packed and slow in any other situation like that.